and then the gifts would be around the edge for all the kids. And I remember that Christmas I got 2 dolls, and I was so happy. And then we used to go home. It was a mile from the schoolhouse to our home, and then we'd have Christmas at home too. I can remember oyster stew, oyster soup. They always had that Christmas Eve when we got home. They'd make oyster stew.
Oh, wow.
You know what that is?
Yes.
With milk and salt and butter, and little oyster crackers. Did you have that?
No, but didn't you also, isn't there another tradition, the Parker family with the corn?
This wasn't the Parker family.
Oh,
This is her.
This was the Stair family.
oh, your family.
My family, yeah. See, I didn't know George till I was 18.
was helping me cook.
I didn't get into the Parkers until I was 18 years old.
Well, how many brothers and sisters did you have?
How many brothers and sisters?
Sorry, Mom.
There were 10 of us.
So you all went to the schoolhouse, and then afterwards.
Yeah, but not, there were only 5 of us then.
Oh, I think that was
Because
hilarious.
my parents had my oldest brother and me and my next brother and 2 sisters, and then we didn't have any more family for quite a few years. And then we moved to town.
I don't want to take that when I'm done.
And after they moved to
But she's
town,
putting the food away. I guess I'm done. Thank you.
after they moved to town, they had 5 more daughters.
Oh,
So there's 8 girls and 2 boys.
nice.
We only had 2 brothers.
But there were only 5 of you then for that kind of
Out on the
tradition.
farm,
The
yeah.
first batch.
5. 2 boys and 3 girls.
So you go home and you'd have oyster stew
Oyster stew
on Christmas
and
Eve.
open up the presents at home.
Oh, did you have a tree?
Oh yeah, always in the middle of the room. They put the tree in the middle of the room, in the middle of the living room. Then have the gifts around the edge. Never in the corner. Tree was never in the corner. It was in the middle of the room.
was it?
And they went out in the woods to cut their own tree.
Oh, that's right.
Well, Dan does. Dan cuts his own tree. And, back in Virginia, there's a lot of those kind of trees. Wisconsin is just loaded with those kind of trees.
Oh, such a lot.
And so is Virginia.
So the school was the center at Grant, Gigi? So you went to school?
The center of the activity.
That's interesting.
Ours was too, Linda.
The
Was
school,
it?
well, that night, yeah.
Was there a play?
Did you have a
Christmas
play?
Eve, there was a program at school. We all had to sing or speak, say something, we had a program.
How
All
many?
the kids took part.
How
Like
many?
Little
of you?
House on the Prairie, huh?
Huh?
How many of you?
How many in the school?
Uh-huh.
Oh, I can't remember.
Well, Gigi, did you go to church?
About 5 in a grade.
Oh, jeez.
And there was 8 grades.
Oh, okay.
40 children.
First grade to the 8th grade. But some of the bigger grades had maybe 2 or 3.
So their families would come, everybody's parents
Everybody came.
come to see the program. Was
Yeah.
there a Santa Claus?
My daddy was Santa
Is
Claus.
that right?
I didn't know it. I didn't know him because he was all dressed up like Santa Claus. And I know when he picked me up and kissed me, I screamed. I didn't know it was my dad. Oh,
funny.
but that was real old time living, like when I was little. It was just old country.
What years are we talking about? 19 what?
I thought everybody was done eating, didn't you?
19?
Yeah, what, 1930, 1920?
Oh no, further
more
back
than
than that.
Further back?
Yeah, like 1915, 14, 15, 16, around in there.
Well, Gigi, then you didn't go to church? Church wasn't
World
it?
War I years.
Do you ever go to church during Christmas?
Oh yeah, we went to the Presbyterian church. We were Presbyterians, and my dad was a Sunday school superintendent. And my mother played the organ in the Sunday school in the church. Yeah, that was in Mindoro, Wisconsin.
Would you go to church on Christmas Day then?
No, we didn't go on Christmas Day.
Christmas Eve?
We
also?
went. Well, sometimes we had the program at the church too.
Oh,
Not always at the school.
okay.
Sometimes at the church.
It was nearby?
Hmm?
It was nearby, the church and the school?
The church, our church was about 3 miles from home. School was 1 mile. And I think the church was between,
Days when it's 20 miles in
between,
1914.
2
Or
or
20 miles, yeah,
Probably,
that'd be a lot.
probably between 2 and 3
I
miles.
walked 3
from-
miles
from
to
home.
school when I was in high school.
But we always went to church on
Probably
Sunday.
went horse and buggy to
But like if Christmas came in the
I
middle of
don't know,
the
she
week,
and Dad
usually
were
the
in the car
program
when
on
you were
Christmas
dating.
Eve was
Uh-huh.
at the schoolhouse. And
Yeah, I
on
heard
Christmas
tales
Day,
of the
I
car-
don't remember too much
Her
about
first date
Christmas
was
Day.
when she was out
Maybe
all
we went
night
to church
because
on
the car got
Christmas Day,
stuck.
I don't know. I know we went to church a lot.
Your tree at home, did you decorate it with ornaments, lights, or popcorn, or how did you?
You know what? We had candles.
You put candles in the tree.
And you burned it for just a few minutes, huh, Jimmy?
You're in trouble.
You didn't burn it very long, did you?
That, I'm glad they don't do that anymore. But my mother would never let the candles be lit until we were all around the tree, and then she'd leave them on for just a short time. and
Kiss
then
me.
go home.
Did you sing a song around them, Mom and Gigi, or what did you do? I mean, you lit the candles, did you have a little, like, did you sing a song and then put them out, or did you
Well,
just?
Linda, that was usually at the time that we were opening gifts.
Oh, you lit the candles then?
Mhm.
Right before you open your gifts?
Mhm.
Gosh, it seems like it would take a long time to light all the candles.
Or somebody came to see the tree.
You had candles
Where
on your
they
tree,
would-
did you?
Yeah, mine. We
But
always
you
had
know-
candy. It didn't stay lit
What,
very
like the
long.
ones we had last
They
night?
light them, let them.
That was
5
a-
minutes and that was the end of it.
That was there were a lot of homes burned down because
That's
of
why
the
they didn't.
Christmas tree. Because you
They lit
see,
'em, and as soon
they
as
go out in the
everybody
woods and they
got to
cut
see
the tree.
They went outside and looked at it, they turned them off.
My mother never left the candles lit very long. I can remember that.
No, they-
Because
no,
she said that the tree might catch on fire.
Funny, there you go.
And we were pretty smart about fire because there was no fire department out there. You had to be your own fire department. If you got a fire, the house would burn down. And a lot of homes did burn. Tell us about Christmas and walked out of the room and left the tree catch on fire and the whole house just
They had
burned
those,
down.
they had, in ours, they had those, like, it was clipped onto the tree, and then it had a container underneath it about this big around, like a jar lid, only shaped up. They put the candles were about 1/4 inch thick, so high, little white candles. They put those in there and put them on, around the tree, and then Mom would light them all. We'd all run outside and look at them.
From the
and come
window or
back in.
something?
Pardon?
So you could look in the window and
Look
see
in the
it?
window, see how
Honey?
pretty it looked, and you go in the house, you blew them all out.
How
Well, that sounds just about like we
I
did.
was scared to burn the
We
house
just
down.
had the lights on long enough to admire the tree all lit up and then blow them out. Because my folks were
big
so
occasion.
scared of fire out there on the farm.
And wasn't you said that your mother put
Have
on
any
Christmas Eve,
protection.
it came down New Year's?
Right. Went up Christmas Eve,
But you know,
came down New Year's Day.
You're supposed to be my generation. My generation didn't do that.
Yeah, but you live in
did.
California, Mom. It's a really big difference, I've
And
noticed.
the
Huge
thing about it
difference.
was that they had an aluminum tree, so it wouldn't have caught on fire anyhow.
Who did?
Dad
It
did.
wasn't aluminum, it was some kind of plastic. It
Oh.
wasn't aluminum.
Oh, I thought it was aluminum.
No, it was green, like a green.
They did used to have aluminum
the
trees.
rabbits were old. And I don't know where the last of them ever went to.
England and Scotland and
But,
Germany and France and you name it.
I came to
That was
California and
enough
I
that time.
don't know, maybe
So
maybe
I
some of the
think
sisters still
everybody
have
walked
some of
down
them,
those
I
streets,
don't
you
know.
heard Any
They
language
were
you wanted to hear, you heard it
fancy,
in school.
very fancy. A lot of
And
them
those children were
were
taught
fancy.
this from day one.
They weren't
Well,
just
of course,
plain
kids
balls,
when they're
they were
very
just
young
fancy.
learn a language very easily.
Did you make any other decorations besides the popcorn?
Well, because somebody
yeah.
got a big
Yeah.
political
See,
idea to push
my
the
folks
other.
used to
And
go
I
to
think it was
town
caused
and-
by boycott.
And they brought, we had a lot of pretty ornaments. We had a lot of pretty
Your money
ornaments.
was involved.
When our tree was in the middle of the room, it was decorated all around, the whole tree, not just the front, all around,
No, no, no,
because it
no.
had to be.
Salad
And-
is great.
Were they
That
bought?
sounded
Were the
wonderful.
ornaments store-bought, or did you hand-make them?
Positive.
From Germany,
Thank you.
No, the ornaments on your tree.
just
were
like we have now.
they-
Mhm.
Well, you know, Marcia, we get imported. Like there's a store over in Coronado where you can get imported ornaments
We had them all sitting
that are
over there.
real expensive.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I
fragile,
bet.
gorgeous.
Well, the ornaments that Grandma brought over from Germany were not just like plain balls like we have. They were all different,
Well, if you remember,
little houses and different.
Yeah.
Gigi, when we were young, and you remember this too, most all of the ornaments that you bought in the dime stores in this country when I was a boy came from Germany.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
They didn't come from Japan. Japan was never
To
heard
begin,
of.
to begin with, it was German.
All
Germany.
German. And we had
Germany's
some
a great,
beautiful
they
ornaments, not
were
many,
known
but
for
we had
making.
But the mom had some that belonged to her family, and they were very beautiful.
I was wondering, what about those? Do we have any of those in the
And
family
your Aunt Edna
still?
May's got them all.
I wondered, because that's what I was wondering about. I was telling you,
Well, a lot
Marcia.
of my
She has them all. She has the little
recollections
chest that mom had a chest that was like this, and about that hard. And that's where the Christmas ornaments were in that chest, all wrapped up. There weren't many of them. And Aunt Edna May's got them all. I don't have them all.
Where does she live?
Up in Boise.
Idaho, huh? Well, that's up in the north. My early recollections of Christmas, I think, were a lot of the German tradition because Grandma was she was our life, our grandma was. And she brought a lot of that with her from Germany. And they're great for Christmas in Germany. They were at least when she was young. But
Was oyster stew a German thing?
Jackie Gleason fit in
Oyster
so well.
stew?
I think the oyster stew,
Oyster stew.
I
is
think
that
that
German?
came from Dad Parker's family, didn't it? The oyster
oh
macaroni.
no, when I was knee-high to a grasshopper, we had oyster stew every
really?
Christmas. Every Christmas Eve, that's what we had, oyster stew.
Well, what was
And we
it?
didn't have Western oysters, we had Chesapeake Bay oysters. Oysters that came from Chesapeake
Heaven
Bay.
forbid you have it, but that's all.
Wow, in Wisconsin, that must have been expensive.
We had oysters that came from Chesapeake Bay. I know when I went back to Dan and Joanna's, and they had oysters, they were just like what we had removed. when I was little. They didn't have any black in them, they were light colored and beautiful. That made good oysters too.
I think it's been about 3 years.
My mother was an English woman.
Well, did you have other foods for Christmas?
Oh, well,
Foods or
I'll start
English?
I'm just talking about Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
That was oyster stew. And, Christmas Day, we had dinner just like we had here today. That kind of dinner.
Very
At the
nice.
recreation.
Ham, roast beef.
I tried to get the
Regular dinner just like we had here today. Mostly always turkey. On Christmas, we had
Yeah.
Thanksgiving, we had turkey.
Yeah, I found a caterer that's come and help me.
I think that, I think when my grandpa and grandma came to the United States, they adapted. I think they left a lot of their
Yeah, probably.
traditions. And I know my grandpa had a thing about him when my father used to tell about this, that you see when grandpa and grandma came over here, they only had one child. And then these other children were born in America. And grandpa did not want grandma to speak any German at all. She didn't want the children to know anything but English. They had to be English, had to be American.
What's that remind
This
you of,
is-
Linda?
Yeah.
I can remember my father and my uncles talking about it, that they wished that they could have known a little more German, not just, they should have let them speak a little more German, but they didn't. Grandpa said, this is our new land, and we live in this country now. This is our new home, and we speak. And Grandpa wasn't here very long until he fought in a war. He had to leave home and fight. I think that was the Spanish-American War. What year was the Spanish-American War?
1898?
It's 18,
1860s?
18,
That's civil.
I
It's
think
after
it
the
was
Civil War, I think.
1890, I want to say 1898. Does that sound,
March is that, I don't know. So March
think
is
it
that.
Must have been
sound
before
right,
that.
1898?
Must have been before that.
Well, Lincoln was president in it's what, 1860?
Well, no, it could have been like that. It could have been about like that.
Oh, it was 1898, Spanish
Because
American War.
Grandpa had to go to war, and Grandma had to manage the farm and raise the children. And when he left, she was pregnant to have a baby, and the baby was born and died. And Grandma buried the baby herself out on the farm. I'll always remember where that little baby was buried. She planted a lilac bush out there. Isn't that sad? Nobody to help her.
No,
Nobody to help her. She had this little baby, and it died. Or maybe it was stillborn, I don't know. But anyway, that must have been awful for her. Cold winters up there in Wisconsin. And the foxes and the wolves used to get into her chicken coop and kill her chickens.
yeah.
It was woodland, Wisconsin woods. And bitter cold in the wintertime. My grandma was a strong woman. She was a strong woman.
People
I
had
love
to be
her so
back
much.
then.
She would just.
They were,
Well, don't
you know, one of the
Don't you
things
think
that I
Gigi is
remember
really strong?
that your mother didn't keep up
They
with
didn't live
her,
very long.
with her Italian and teach you and
Oh, I
learn to speak
know.
it. I feel so bad about that because we got married. She didn't speak Italian fluently. I don't know if she could write it, but I knew she could speak it. And I particularly didn't care whether the children learned Italian or not. In fact, I said, they don't need to learn.
I'm against it.
But I would give anything if she would have taught the children Italian.
Yep.
Speak it, just be able to speak it.
Well, nowadays, we
Would have been
feel,
nice.
Yeah, it would have been.
we feel that way, Chuck.
Pardon?
You and I feel that
Yeah.
way. If I knew another language, I would want my children to speak it and learn it.
Well, I felt very strongly about learning to speak English because we lived here. And that was my family, my mother's
Yeah,
family
it's just
only
as much
spoke
brother's
Italian.
responsibility.
Well, when Grandpa and Grandma came here, Grandpa said, see, they both knew how to
Yeah,
speak
see, my
English
sister married in.
when they came here. And Grandpa said, we don't want any German spoken in our home because this is our new land. We speak English language in this
I
land.
started to school and I spoke broken
Consequently,
English.
You broken
Mine-
English? It was embarrassing, wasn't it?
They had 4 boys and 1 girl. And the only one that could speak German was Aunt Lottie. She was the one that came from Germany with them. But when she came to America with them, she was a baby. She wasn't grown up.
My mother was 6.
Then when they come to America, they had 4 boys.
Your mother was raised here and she didn't speak English?
She spoke English, but that's all my grandfather and grandmother did, so they only spoke Italian.
And the reason you could
So
speak.
did
And I lived with grandma until I was around 5.
Oh, I see.
Did they speak Italian all the time?
My poor grandmother could hardly understand English.
So
My grandfather died so young. He died real young. Mine.
her dad got busy and learned enough English fast.
Well, Grandma used to forget herself, but she'd speak German a lot, And, she was so wonderful.
In church
But
last
anyway,
night.
Grandpa didn't want the German language spoken at home because he wanted the family to speak English.
The same thing with my dad.
Last night at church, there was 2 women speaking German behind us. Did you hear that?
I heard her explain that to you after service, I think.
English.
They were her neighbors, right?
Older, actually, like, she couldn't say Charles or Charles.
Looks like we're gonna be eating turkey for a while, Bob.
Tape it, the
sad.
accent on the wrong side.
Yeah.
And Sean, of course, that
Yeah.
goes with it. That's
Really?
my dad's name. Maybe some laugh.
No.
Try to tell you something and
I don't think
you
so.
sit there and
Tomorrow's
have no idea
Sunday.
what she was saying.
Probably eat out with my friends.
I'm talking about my Welsh grandmother.
Maybe your
Born
mom
and
might
raised
like to
in,
take
her and my
some home.
grandfather came from
She
Carlisle,
don't wanna
Wales. They
take
were
it.
married, came on this country, and then all the children were born in this country. I can understand my grandmother.
They spoke Welsh? Is
Welsh,
that the-
spoke Welsh.
Wow, Welsh.
And my dad spoke some Welsh and could understand his parents, but all I ever heard was bad words. It's quite interesting, but
You
my
put that in the
grandmother
freezer?
must be 97, and she spoke Welsh.
Well, you'll have it
George
tomorrow and
And
maybe
you know what,
Monday.
she was, talk about your patriot. Even
Did you take
though I don't know
sandwiches to
how long
school?
before she died, but every night
You do too.
she had her shot of whiskey. And her whiskey bottle and the shot glass sit right on a tray, right on top of her bureau. And she, from 72 years old on, she was totally blind when she died, but she was losing her sight. But she didn't miss her drink. She'd put her finger down in there to the, Mom said, to the first turn, and then she'd pour the whiskey in there. When it touched her finger, she had her shot. But anyhow, on Sunday morning, they had, like my mother said, they have a council. And she raised her family, raised all the boys. My grandfather died before my dad was born. 5 months before Dad was born, his dad died. She raised all of her children. She had, what'd we say, it'd be 6 or 7 boys and 2 girls. And she opened a boarding house out, they call it out in the Patch, coal mining community. And through that boarding house, she raised her children, put them through school and everything. So after even after his party, when my dad, after he was married, Sunday morning, he had to go over to her house, and everybody sat around this table. And they had their family meeting. And she run the meeting. And she laid it, Dad said she laid a cane on the table.
Oh,
And if you said something she didn't like, you got cracked.
with that cane.
That's right. So the boys learned to be quiet. She
Every week?
Every Sunday morning. No church. She went to her.
Was that like,
She was church.
was that, did they believe in God?
Oh yes. In fact, my grandfather was a Methodist school teacher. I mean, a Sunday school teacher.
Is that the
Grandpa
silver,
Littlehale.
no, the silver thing that I have on my table during the regular year? Is that from her boarding house? Mom?
Huh?
Is that the silver thing that I have that's from her boarding house?
Must have been.
The glass
An old-
container I
and
keep
those
the silver
old,
in?
Silverware? Must have been.
What about that crochet
I don't know.
row, Mom? Is that from it too, or is that
That
from?
crochet that you did,
Uh-huh.
that's my grandmother made that.
Okay.
But my dad was not a religious person. He went to church because my mother conned him into it.
Your mother told
And
me
he
that.
would go, but I can't remember any of my uncles or my Aunt Annie also stayed in the Methodist church. And she was quite active in the Methodist church. And of course, after my grandmother died, it was another story, but we're talking about way
How
back.
come you changed to Episcopalian for Lee?
Because I was Roman Catholic and he was Lutheran.
Oh, Luther.
That was a common ground.
You know, there was something said about the Stair family in Germany were Catholic. In Germany. But when they came to the United States, they were Presbyterian. My father, I don't know about Grandma. I don't remember where Grandma and Grandpa went to church. If they did go to church, I don't even remember. Because they came here from Germany. But I heard through the family that you know, before they came to America, they were Catholic. In Germany, they were Catholic. And I knew, I lived next door to a Czechoslovakian woman. And in Czechoslovakia, she was a very devout Catholic. But she said, and then she didn't go to any church. And I said, well, Marie, why don't you go to church with me if you don't want to go to your own church? And she said, well, maybe someday I will. But I said, but why don't you go to your own Catholic church? There's a nice Catholic church not too far. She said, the Catholics in the United States are no good.
Oh my.
So maybe that's
She
why.
said, they're no good here.
Bad news.
So maybe Grandpa and Grandma figured the same way when they come from Germany. Maybe they figured the Catholics in the United States were no good. I don't know.
You must remember, Martha, that like in my hometown, which was a small coal mining community, that my dad's brothers and sisters all lived within about 2 blocks of their mother.
Joe,
They
you get
they
tired.
all lived right, with the exception of one. They all lived right there, so they were readily available to take care of, and they did. They took care of their mother.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't hurt
My
you.
mother, after they got married,
No.
my mother used to help do laundry for her
Gotta
and
get
take
home,
care of
it's
her, because
okay.
she was getting quite old. You figure somebody lives to be 97 years old, they've been on this earth a long time, haven't they?
Yeah, I'm gonna be 90.
You don't look, act, or talk like you're 90, Gigi.
Oh,
110.
maybe they need to stick at my age. 110? Well, I believe you.
Well, I'll tell you, I think it's wonderful that as young as you are, don't you think so?
Oh, God,
The memory you have,
uh-huh.
your memory, I think it's great. I wish mine was that good.
The gravy
What
you
did I
make?
just say?
This friend of mine, whose wife has Alzheimer's, she used to write me love letters every Christmas. And thank goodness Ski has been so nice and writes me a letter every Christmas. And this year he sent me a poem that he said, if Seal was herself, she would be sending this to you instead of me. But it was about forgetting and stuff. It's the neatest poem. It's
About
just
being 80?
beautiful.
Was it about being 80?
No, it's just getting to a point in life where you don't remember things.
Oh,
Leonard
I'm there.
told us-
I'm
Leonard
in
told us
trouble.
a story, his sister Mary was at our house, and then everybody was there. And Leonard said, he was telling a story about the guy that was sitting in a chair, and he said, Dad was sitting in the chair. He said, Aunt Mary got up and she went to go upstairs. She got upstairs, she said, now, was I going upstairs or coming down? And he said, so Mom headed to the bathroom, and she said, did I just go or am I going? And said, Dad sat there in his chair and said, Dad knocked on his door. Thank God, he said, I've got a better memory than that. He said, by the way, we got the front door or the back door.
that's funny.
Oh, my God. Well, I don't care. I may be old, and there may be a lot of other people getting older, but there's a lot of young people that do some darn stupid things too.
Yes, right.
We had a friend, Barbara Miller, up in Englewood, and she didn't have any more memory than you could stick a stick at. She would clearing the table, and at the same time she'd see the kids' shoes sitting here. She'd go put the shoes in the refrigerator and put the butter in it. She'd do things like that. Barbara was just no memory at all.
Not surprise me about Barbara. So this is all when after the kids are raised and gone that you were going off to Vegas on the weekend.
Oh, glad to hear it.
Yeah,
I
it
mean,
was.
I
of
bet-
course, how old was
I
she
bet
though when
you
the
and
kids
Joe
were gone?
both remember.
When John and I got married, she was 40, and she talked like, well, my life is over.
Oh,
I
no.
don't, you did
I
too
never
at
did.
that time. You didn't.
I don't think I ever did that.
Well, I can
She
see you
was,
would. Your life revolved around your kids. I'm not surprised that you would act like that.
JG, do
Really?
you remember?
I've always been very active in church and everything.
You remember on Saturday night?
My gosh, Linda, I worked 5 days a week, 7 hours a day,
I know you did.
kept my own house, I never had any help.
Not like me, huh?
I worked
Boy, I heard that one.
Her father, when he was out here, I was staying with him, pregnant with Dad, and her father was out for Christmas. And he got me aside and he says, you just have to take care of yourself because Ann will work you to death if you let her.
Do you remember on Saturday nights, I'm sure you do, Joe, back in my hometown, they'd have their square dances. And the square dances would be at somebody's house. So they'd go over there and move all the furniture and the rug out of the living room. It all went out, and just had the old wooden floors.
Boy, I bet that old house was
And
shaking.
my grandpa used to call the dances, square dances. Everybody brought the food, and all of us kids, would be there. We couldn't go out when they were dancing because it'd get in their way. And so we used to play in the kitchen, and then they'd put us all to bed, and we'd be laid on that bed in rows in the house there, all of us kids. And they'd have
You know, I
that'd be
remember-
their Saturday night parties.
I remember when my folks used to do that, with the neighbors up in Wisconsin,
Mhm.
they'd have parties on, on Saturday night, and all of us kids, when we got sleepy, there was a room for us all to lay down.
Yeah, that's.
Well, your father was still going to dances when he was in his 80s.
Yeah.
He was.
Well, that's where
Her
she
father
gets it.
he was I dearly loved him. He was the only friend I had that one winter.
You know, he died when he was 91, and he was just as alert. He was up on world affairs. He could carry on a conversation about what was happening in the
Well,
world.
look at you.
He read the newspapers every day. My dad.
Strong genes.
The old men would be out, all the men would be out in the backyard with their drinking their home brew, you know. Because it was illegal for in those days to have, they didn't have alcohol in stores or what have you. You had to brew your own.
Maybe that's why they're so long-lived.
Oh,
Well, now I
they had
understand they're
They had
recommending
good
the wine
times.
to
Stop and think about it.
everybody.
They were pretty good. Those people lived back in the days. I think they.
Yeah, but they didn't live to be old.
Huh?
Not the majority didn't live to be old.
No, no.
No, they,
Naturally, you're actually.
my grandfather
much
died
longer.
at 72
Your family lived to be older.
on
but-
the other side of the.
You know, my mother.
Dad was 72.
My mother died when she was 60, but we always said that my mother died because she just worked herself to death for us kids. She didn't take care of herself, she never bought anything for herself. She just worked to take care of us kids.
But
And
me-
Dad was well taken care of. He worked for Standard Oil Company, and he was an auditor, audited stations through Minnesota and Wisconsin. And he lived in a hotel all week. You know, he checked into the hotel every night. He came home on Friday. And so he was a businessman. He dressed nice, took care of himself. So he lived to be 91. My mother worked herself to death for us kids and died at 60. She did. She had a big garden all summer long. She'd raise all of her own stuff in the garden. And she washed, ironed, and cleaned.
On the
I can
scrub board?
remember.
On the scrub board?
Yeah. And I can remember when sometimes at school or something, I had to be dressed up. I can remember staying up way late at night to sew me a new dress. Give me a new dress, I'll take this the next day at school.
Hey, Grandma, when did
Yeah.
you and Grandpa come to California?
What year?
Yeah,
1923.
23.
Small,
December 22nd.
a small state then, wasn't it?
Oh, it was, LA was a beautiful city.
I bet it was.
Oh, it was a beautiful city. The stores were refined. All the clerks wore dark dresses and they waited on you. And people went shopping. They wore hats and gloves. It was beautiful and refined and beautiful. It didn't start to get trashy until World War II. After World War II,
Sometimes I can work.
I know, I was
downtown Los Angeles was a beautiful city.
I was in Los Angeles in 1940 and it was beautiful then, in 40. Of course, it's grown
Los
quite a bit.
Angeles?
Yeah, we used to take the
Yeah.
red line out of Long Beach,
Yeah,
went to Los Angeles, and there was nothing in between.
yeah,
Just tumbleweeds
know.
and desert.
I know. Wasn't that the Pacific
The
Electric?
Pacific Electric,
Yeah.
the red line, yeah.
The red line, yeah.
Take them
We used to
Long
go to
Beach,
Redondo.
LA.
We lived in Redondo Beach when we first came out here.
She used to
What
go
I
down
had
and
to-
cry all
Grandma,
day.
what I had to see,
at
like
the
you heard
beach.
about it, not just a young kid,
She was so
I had to
lonely.
see all those stars on in front of the Chinese
Oh, in front of the
Drummond
Drummond
Theater.
Chinese Theater.
Yeah, I had to go see those.
Yeah.
And actually, we went to Los Angeles to see
Yeah.
those.
Uh-huh. Well,
Were you impressed?
Yeah, oh, wasn't I? Because I was always been a movie star nut anyhow. Movies, I love movies.
You should have grown it. See, now where I grew up, the railroad station was in every movie made.
yeah.
Snow or
Inglewood.
summer, they used the railroad station in
I'm
Inglewood.
telling you.
And they'd have these big sun reflectors that they used. And so you'd see those glinting clear across town. Everybody ran to the,
Yeah.
saw all kinds of movie stars.
You know, there was one picture that Wallace Beery was in, and they shot that picture in the middle of summer, and it was hotter than blue blazes that summer. And it was the station was Rocky Brook, New York. And Wallace Beery was supposed to meet this young girl on the train that was coming in. And he was supposed to be pacing up and down and trying to keep his hands warm. And he was swearing.
Well,
We
one
watched
time
him
they
make that
had,
movie, and he was swearing. And there was, I guess the sweat was running down between all down his
You're
forehead.
supposed to act like he's cold, huh?
He's supposed to.
one year they had the whole thing covered in like snow, like, who was the ice skater?
Sonia Henning?
Sonia
Sonia
Henning
Henning.
was skating all around.
Yeah. But anyway, Wallace Beery was swearing. We could hear him swearing because the directors would make him make the same little scene over and over. Let's do it again.
Oh, they'd take a scene.
And he'd walk up and down
15
like
times.
to make it look like it was cold, you know, and it was hot. And the whole depot was covered like
One
Joe's
time
covered in snow.
the guy was eating popcorn, and every time they shot scene again, he had to have a fresh thing of popcorn. And so all his kids standing around, you got the popcorn.
And they made a lot of movies around up in there.
Oh, yeah.
Joe's,
Were
you
you
know,
I
raised
sat
John.
on Caesar
Joe?
Romero's
Inglewood.
lap one day and had
Clark,
lunch.
Clark Gable was making a movie. Clark Gable had the kids working for him.
Do you know where Hollywood almost was?
Inglewood,
In,
came close.
after
My,
that, though.
my stepfather was on the city board, city fathers, who voted not to have it.
Anyhow, they made a lot of their Western movies here in La Mesa.
Oh, I've heard
Oh,
about
that
that. Yeah.
could have been too.
That guy
And
was
La
right
Mesa-
here too.
La Mesa come very close to becoming,
A lot of people didn't want it.
yeah.
Do you know where they made a lot of more
They were
westerns?
smart, weren't
Up
they?
in
Way back?
Calabasas. You know where Calabasas
Yep,
is?
I know where they
Out in the valley? That's where they made a lot of movies, out in Calabasas. You know where that is.
Well, the first Virginian that was filmed, the first time they made the Virginian, they used Oliver's home. That was in the Virginian, inside and out.
Near Calabasas. Was
No, it was on
Who's Oliver, your stepfather?
In Inglewood?
in Inglewood.
Oh, in Inglewood. Oh.
You bet.
But
Well,
we
they
had to
made an
go-
awful lot of movies up in there, I know that.
We spent all day down in downtown Los Angeles looking at all of the places, you see young people like that. What if you'd see a movie star walking around or something like that? You put your hand down, see if they get you in those prints.
You know,
And everything was so, like she said, everything was so spotless and clean. The walks were just
It
spotless.
really wasn't
The
anything
buildings
like
were
that.
just
doors were
beautiful and
beautiful.
glistened,
Oh,
you
the
know, it was
stores were
clean.
just perfect.
And I mean clean and wide streets. You didn't see that back in the Midwest, you know.
No,
Big, beautiful wide
we,
streets
we
and
used to go
clean
downtown
buildings
Los
and-
Angeles and we thought, boy, this is really a beautiful city, and it was a beautiful
was,
city.
my goodness.
That's what impressed me about Long Beach. I always thought Long Beach.
Long Beach was
so
beautiful.
beautiful and clean, you know, right on the ocean.
It's hard to believe how everything
Yeah.
was caught.
Long Beach, was just one great big Long Beach. Long Beach was, yeah. And then all the businesses were like this side of the street facing the ocean, and there wasn't anything down there but small buildings. So you had this beautiful view of this.
Yeah. Too bad we didn't know what later happened. When we first came out here, we could have been very wealthy. Because you know where Century City is,
Mhm.
out off of Pico
Oh, sure,
Boulevard.
yeah.
That you could go out there and for $200 you could buy a great big piece of property. But it was way out in the sticks, nobody wanted it. And now it's Century City.
Right in the center of everything.
That's right.
Yeah.
Why did you come out here?
When?
Why?
Why? Oh, we were a newly married couple and we wanted to get out of that town where you could get, you know, people just leave. People
Well,
leave
didn't you
home.
say that you guys just packed up one day and left?
Oh, no, we planned it for a long time.
Well, for a year? I remember you talking to us about coming out.
No, we didn't plan it for that long, maybe,
He was born in Watts.
oh, I don't know. I know we both
You never
worked
knew
and
that
saved our
place
money
but Los Angeles.
to come to
Area.
California. And,
That's
so,
fundraising
I think-
for,
I think maybe we
Oh,
planned
it
it for
was
maybe
neat.
3 or 4 months, but not a year.
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean. That's what I thought. You just
Right up-
I
packed up
think
and
maybe
left.
Grandpa did.
And then
I think,
they
but not
moved
me.
in the
I
factory
think
here.
my husband
And
planned on getting out. Because you know, the only thing you could do in La Crosse was get a factory job
We
or
never
work for the
saw
railroad.
hers in
You didn't have
place there.
jobs when you came out? You didn't
Oh,
have
yeah,
jobs?
yeah, we
Did
were
have
both
jobs. And of course,
working.
that was probably
We were
because
both
of the
working.
swing shift.
We worked
They
for the
didn't do that
National
at home
Gauge and
either.
Equipment Company.
Someplace else
And
would
that
be
was
beautiful
where they
one
made
day, where they're-
automobile gauges, you know, the gauges, oil gauge.
Did you have a transfer
When I
on?
was growing
No.
up, I went to San Francisco, you wore gloves and a hat.
They just got in the car and
But hell,
we
they
got
didn't
no.
like
It's
it.
a
I
train.
have to
That's
do
how
that.
it's
Couldn't get ahead.
there,
Of course, we came to California, we saw it as not so easy out here too.
Was it hard to get a job?
1940.
It was for him, yeah, of course.
To go and get
I,
it
yeah.
going on.
I don't know, I was busy
Oh, well, we
We
enjoyed
bought a
that
little
job
house.
when you retired.
and I was busy with the house and I was always gonna, I was always gonna make, plans
They were just
to
building.
work
It up there.
and
What they were-
get ahead, you know.
They had just
But
finished.
then, you know what I
doing the
found out?
Golden Gate Bridge at that time.
What? Isn't that funny? I
Pregnant.
can't remember.
Oh,
I saw cranes.
Oh, well.
Never made
It
it.
didn't finish, but.
Did you take the train or did you
They
drive
were
Might have
out?
been working on it.
train,
that's what I thought.
Golden Gate Exposition, so they must
And
have.
then I remember you telling me you used to
Just
What do you
cry.
mean drive out? We didn't have a car.
That's what I thought. But didn't you say you used to go down to the
And we
beach and
didn't
I
cry?
think it was 32 or 33.
Didn't you say you used to go down to the beach and cry? Because you were so, you
Oh,
missed everybody
yeah,
so
that's
much?
when Grandpa was looking for a
Life Games
job.
Authority, and they'd
Yeah.
been running-
Yeah,
That was the
We
second,
lived in Redondo
season
Beach.
for it. I
and
guess into 39.
he'd leave to go to Los Angeles to look for a job, and I would walk down by the pier, and I'd sit down there and I'd cry and cry. I was so lonesome.
no family out here,
I was
nobody.
so lonesome.
That's a big trip.
I didn't know.
I didn't have anybody.
But the lady
I did
across the
that.
street had it.
Did
That
you?
is scary.
You know what it is.
So,
Yeah.
and
It's
that was
so-
just a buddy of mine who's with me. His
I
brother
wanted to
was
go
bigger.
home so bad,
He.
but I loved my
got the
husband
number
so
and
much.
his parents,
that I-
his mother was
I
across
knew
the street,
that
got my mother.
it was impossible for me
Oh,
to
yeah, it
go
was
home,
really exciting.
because I had to stay out here because he was going to get a job, and he
Oh,
finally did. He finally got
You
a
know, it was
job.
a big deal.
And
Yeah.
so things began to look up then. After he got a job, things began to look up. And we began to go to movies and stuff like that a little more, you know. And then, of course, when the baby came, it was really so wonderful that he just made my life,
Yeah.
that little boy. And we used to take him with us wherever we went. And you know, he was a beautiful little boy. He was just John. He was a beautiful little boy. You know, we'd go downtown in the stores, downtown LA, and the clerks used to take him away from me. And they'd all get, you know, over by themselves, they'd get together and admire him because he was just the most beautiful little boy I ever saw. He was just smiling all the time, happy-go-lucky, and really a beautiful
That's
little boy.
what Joe saw in.
Huh?
That's what Joe saw.
Anyway, things began to look up, and little by little, you get over the homesickness, you know. You do.
I never was that homesick.
I never was either.
Isn't that weird?
You know, moving to Texas for 2 years didn't bother me one bit.
You weren't homesick?
No, not an iota.
We moved Great Lakes
Oh,
and
I
we came
was.
out here.
Neither was John.
You know, one of the first talkies that I remember?
Oh,
was-
yeah, Al Jolson.
No, that wasn't the first one. The first one I'll never forget was Dick Powell singing with Joan Blondell, and he was singing to her, "You must have been a beautiful baby." You remember
Yeah.
that? That's my first talkie that I remember.
Yeah?
But,
Yeah.
see, I've seen that on late night.
You know, Chuck?
That's a good
Yeah.
old movie.
did you ever happen to be up around LA when they had the electrical parades?
No.
Oh, those were gorgeous. That's when the movie stars used to shine. Because they would have these electrical parades. They would start out in Hollywood, and they'd end up at the Coliseum, down in the Coliseum, you know? You know the Coliseum on Figueroa? Where they play the football, the football field?
USC.
Yeah, the Coliseum. And
That's where
anyway,
the Raiders play.
the people used to line the streets, and the stars all rode in electrified automobiles. They were all lit up with electric lights.
Like the boats in the harbor.
And you know, no kidding, I shook hands with Jack Dempsey,
Oh, wow.
and Jack Dempsey wanted to take our little boy, because, you know, Jack.
But you know, in those days, movie stars were friendly and nice.
Oh,
It wasn't
Oh,
the way
they were
things
so
are today.
friendly.
They really
They would-
were. When you were watching them on location, they'd come and talk to you in
Oh,
between
sure.
scenes. And
Well, just like John,
they were very nice people.
John and
Nowadays, I don't think you ever
And-
meet one
and the
that would
other
do that.
kids. they worked for Clark Gable one time when he was making. a
Oh, I
movie
wouldn't
up
be
there.
surprised.
Sure. And he gave them all kinds of candy bars. That was their pay.
I was telling my grandchildren yesterday, we were down there with the big organ in the lower floor of the house. I was telling them my hometown had an organ like that right down in the middle of the pit of the theater.
Oh,
And-
yes, I
And
remember
they were
that.
silent movies, you see. So the organist they get the music to the movie, like
Yeah, I know
Tom
that.
Mix's movies, you know, and
We had
Oliver and
one.
Hardy.
We had one in La Crosse, Wisconsin that was blind. He was a blind organist, And boy, he played that organ just beautiful, and it went right along with the picture, like I said.
That went up almost to World War II, where
Yeah.
they would have interludes where they
And then they had,
played the organ.
then they start out the movie and it had the music to get you in the mood of what was going on. Then they had the written captions below and you had to read everything. If you didn't read it,
Yeah, that was
and
silent.
you were
Silent
lost. Yeah, well, the whole thing, what he said and what she said. So it just
Yeah.
kept continuous reading. You had
If
to
you,
read all of that
if
to
you
find out
didn't
what
get
was
it
going on
read
in the
in
movie.
time, you didn't know what the movie was about.
Oh, you can see a gal go like she,
Yeah, such a.
so funny. You know. And I was telling the boys that later on, when the talkies came in, some of these top movie stars, both male and female, they were no longer movie stars because they had the most horrible voices that they couldn't use them in the
That's right.
modern day movies.
When talkies came in, when the talking movies came in, a lot of the old stars that used to be the best stars
Faded from the,
couldn't handle the vocal part.
Wasn't Valentino one of them? His voice was squeaky or something?
Yeah, he's supposed to be the women's idol.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember seeing a huge organ in Hawaii at the Princess Theater down in the pit. It was huge.
yeah, I
this
think
organ.
they were all across the country.
Yeah, in my hometown, right up the street from the theater, was the Kavanaugh residence, one of the prettier homes in that hometown. And Mr. Kavanaugh for the movies, the different selections he would play. Well, he was some beautiful music. He did all that in his home there.
We're getting there, Robert.
And I guess, and then we were, our camping club, about 3 years ago, on the Christmas, New Year's that we used to take off. It's in Borrego this year, that's why we won't be going. But anyhow, this one year was that we went up to the Orange County and stayed at the Orange County Fairgrounds. I can't remember where it was, but it's in another town close by. And this man has a big, huge 2-car garage. And he raised the roof on it. And they put this huge organ from one of the big theaters in there. And he gives concerts.
Oh,
And he gave a concert for us, and he had 2 guest artists there that night. He has regular theater seats and everything in there. That's right, here's his home, and there's a beautiful patio
right now,
here.
look.
We always thought that the movie stars of today are no good compared to the older ones. Well, you know, that could be all
Oh,
wrong.
acting wise, I think they're just as good. But they just, the public
More glass on the table, Robert.
has become too hard to deal with.